We'll need to unmute you.
Yeah, I forgot about that one. I'm just pulling up my agenda here. Okay, so I'll call the Finance Committee meeting to order. Do we have anyone on the line for public comment? I don't see anyone, so we'll just move forward. So the first item on the agenda is to review the RFP for the auditor. And this is something that we were just going to revisit for some board members who want to be able to review the proposals and have some discussion on this. So we're going to have some more discussion. I have, I gathered my notes. I know I talked to several board members, several of our people who have also read through and taken notes and had some additional thoughts. So what I was thinking we could do is go around, have each person share their takeaways from the proposals, and then after everyone has shared all of their takeaways, then we'll go back around and everyone can say, you know, what their recommendations are as far as what to move forward for the board meeting on Monday. So I'll just share some of the notes that I had from going through this. So in looking at the two proposals that were the lower cost, that were more comparable, I'm going to focus on those two and not really talk about the two that were the higher value, unless other board members decide that they want to have conversations about those as well. But just going over the differences between those two. When you look at the different proposals as far as the costs, it's difficult to see in the proposal for Barbicane what exactly, how many hours are going to be committed to this and who's doing what percentage of the work. So the other firm had delineated how many hours they were going to commit and which positions would be doing the work. And so from this, it's hard to know who's going to be doing what work and how many hours. And then as I was going through the proposal, there was some things that stood out that were the same, that were great things. They both have in-house training for clients. They both had grant funding experience, which I thought was great. They both had the same, you know, some, as far as their qualifications and certifications. Another thing that I thought was great, you know, another thing that was kind of a difference, the Barbicane is based out of Delaware, and all of their,
Did she freeze?
Yeah, I don't know if it's just me, but she's frozen for me.
I liked.
There she is.
Ms. Baines-Clemens, hang on a second. We lost
Can you hear
you when you, we can now, we lost you when you were they're out of Delaware. So you'll need to go back to that point and start from there, please.
Go back to where? Sorry.
You stated that they're out of Delaware and then you froze.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so they're out of Delaware. The other one is out of Jameson, PA. All of the commitment then that they talk about in their community experience is Delaware related as opposed to Pennsylvania related. I liked that Axelrod included reference contact at letters, which I thought was really helpful to read the letters from the people who supported them, as opposed to you know, not having those included. I thought that was a nice touch. And then going through the actual proposals, just, sorry, I have lots pulling through to all of my notes here. There were some other things that kind of stood out as far as their focus. I talked about how there were some errors that kind of were a concern to me in the one proposal, and I wanted to kind of just touch base about that. And in the one section, for example, it talked about the control risk, and it said that if the control risk is assessed as high, no additional control work will be completed on that process. If the control risk is low or moderate, we will design and execute tests of controls and determine the effectiveness of the controls defined. That should be the other way around. Obviously, if there's a higher risk, that's when you're trying to fix those problems. The other thing that I wanted to point out is when it talks about who's going to be in charge of this from their group, it says, as managing partner, Ms. Baker will be ultimately responsible for the engagement. All audit plans, work programs, timetables, and staff are reviewed and approved by her. Then if you go further down in the same page, it says that someone else is, it says that someone else is in fact going to be doing that instead of her. And so I don't know which one of them will actually be in charge of it. And the other person, it says Mr. Sawyer will be the partner in charge of your engagement. It will be his responsibility to know and understand the town of Northeast as a significant audit client. And then it says Mr. Sawyer will remain your key contact person throughout the engagement. He will be ultimately responsible for adherence to professional standards and timetables. But if you go to the front and at the top, it says that Ms. Baker is going to be your contact person. She's the one who signed the engagement letter. So it's confusing because it says one person, I don't know who's actually going to be in charge of the case. And I think that's important. The other piece of this is that the one individual that is suggested that he will be in charge of this case, it says that he is licensed to practice in Delaware and Maryland. It does not state any licensing in Pennsylvania. And so that was something else that concerned me, to have someone who is the partner in charge of a case that's not certified in Pennsylvania. And
Ms. Baines-Clemens, I just want to clarify one item because we received clarification on that, because that was something that had come up that we checked on. So apparently CPAs in Pennsylvania recognize Delaware through reciprocity.
Okay.
And so if you are in Delaware, you do qualify for Pennsylvania. They also indicated that if that's an issue for us, they do have two partners who have Pennsylvania certificates that they'd be willing to assign if that mattered to us.
Okay. The other thing that I liked about Axelrod is they talked about how they have a group of individuals who actually worked in the public sector. So they not only know the accounting and auditing aspects of public sector entities, they also know how to do the work. In addition, these individuals have been involved on the ground floor of such issues as performance measures and performance auditing within the public sector. This capability permits them to provide value-added services to its public sector clients by allowing them to measure and manage the use of diminishing resources to ensure that desired services and outcomes are achieved. I thought that was an interesting add. They both touted their experience with public school entities, and that was a big focus for both of them. The other thing I really liked about Axelrod was they were very focused on relationship building and making sure that they built those conversations and those meetings, and that was kind of a common thread and theme throughout their proposal, which was something else that I really liked in theirs. So for me, you know, when you're talking about cost, I went into this, I didn't have any prior knowledge about any of these 4 firms. So I went into this just kind of evaluating their proposals, getting the feedback on references, and looking at cost. So initially I went into this thinking, well, I'm probably going to pick the first one unless there's something, the cheapest one, unless there's something that pushes me in the other direction. And as I read through the proposals, you know, I thought that the inaccuracies in the one proposal, compared to the other proposal that was much more focused, detailed, and provided the additional resources, led me to that position. In the same meeting that we had last time, we talked about 2 different findings in our audit, our other audit that was done, and how you know, we're saving a substantial amount of money based on those 2 findings. And so, you know, when you're talking about $1,000 difference, you know, just a negligible difference between them, my concern is always having a firm whose attention to detail is the best, so that they pick up anything, because if you miss things, it can cost you a lot of money in the long run. And so for me, that was what factored into where I came down to that decision. So if anyone else, let me know if anyone else wants to share. We'll rotate around. Who else wants to add your input from the proposals that you read?
Well, I'll jump right into the fray of things. I've been involved with audit for over 40 years in the nonprofit sector.
Hey, Bob,
Yes, sir.
you can't hear you too well. You're not facing the microphone or something.
How about I move closer? Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, much better then. Okay, good. I've been in the private, in the public sector for 40 years. I've looked at audits. I've been involved with audits. I've been involved with good audits, bad audits. So what I wanted to do when I looked at these 2 proposals is I reached out to 2 auditing companies in Bucks County. One is Chrysler Miller. The other one is B. Bergvall. Chrysler Miller recommended B. Bergvall as a contact for nonprofit communities. Chrysler Miller basically does manufacturing businesses. They're not involved in the nonprofit world. Their comment to me was, go to Bergvall because that's their bailiwick, and they know all the people in the nonprofit world. So I did turn around. I called Cindy Bergvall from B. Bergvall and Company, and Cindy gave me glowing reports on Ms. Thornton. She indicated that Ms. Baker is an expert in the field of nonprofit and school district work. She touted them as one of the best firms that she's dealt with. She felt very confident that we would be satisfied with their services. And furthermore, she indicated that we need to just contact all of the school districts that they're working with to get the same kind of results. So based off of that, I did talk to her about their audit and making some mistakes. She says that happens at times. She goes, she can't verify or deny. She didn't want to get into it, of course, and I didn't really want to press it. So based on that, and based on the fact that you had to go back to Z&A and ask them for a review of their commitment from a profit standpoint, and they reduced their fees, they didn't sharpen their pencil in the first time. And I basically think that we need to stay with Ms. Kane and Thornton as the key component for doing our audit for the next 4 years.
Bob, were you able to get in touch with anybody that had experience with Axelrod too, to compare the feedback for both organizations?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I think you have to consider that maybe in January when this RFP first went out, when this went out, January, early February, the economy was a lot different at that time, and maybe coming back and with a lower price has to do with everything that's going on at this time with the coronavirus and COVID-19. So maybe they felt a need to lower that price because they're trying to work through difficulties with that. Yeah, I was going to ask the same question as Lisa. I'd be interested to hear the people that you talked to, what their comments were on Zelensky and Axelrod. It's kind of one-sided to go in there and make that call and only ask them about one of the companies when we're obviously comparing the two.
When you talk about the cost factor and them reducing it, I kind of think if we reach out and say, hey, do you guys want to give us your best number? And they come back and give us their best number, to then be mad at them for giving us a better number seems a little, it seems like almost like we're kind of setting them up.
Can we reach out to Barbicane and ask them if they'll lower their price too and see what they say? Because
Well,
if that's a negative, if you're classifying that as a negative, then if they come back and say, okay, we'll lower the price, then you have to include that as a negative for them too. I mean,
the other piece of the numbers here, which I thought was interesting, is that one where they came in with the lowest number, but the fees are ranges. They're not specifics for what they're paying people. And then it doesn't tell you how many hours. And so my concern with the financial piece of that too is I have no idea how much time they're committing or what level employee is doing what work, because it doesn't tell me how many hours are going to what person. And by not making that kind of a commitment, it allows them to, kind of float more things to less salaried employees to be able to make that cost. One of the things that I was evaluating too, when I was comparing them to the two that give us a higher bid, like with Malley and BBD, was looking at how they do things as far as their higher level employees compared to their lower level employees, and how much what are you getting for your dollars, right? Because the people who are at the top are making the most money per hour because they have the most knowledge and experience, and the people at the bottom are making less money. And so I thought it was helpful to compare the hourly, how much work is being given to what level employees, so you see what value you're getting for your number as well. Because if someone's charging you less money, but they're only having low level employees do all of the work, versus someone who's charging you more money, but they have higher level employees doing the work, your value could be different, especially when the numbers are that close together as well. But for me, look, I get it. Everybody, when you want to look at costs and things like that, but for me, we didn't just ask people to submit costs, we asked people to submit proposals. And so if people are submitting a proposal to me and I just overlook the fact that there were errors, omissions, and those kinds of discrepancies in there, then I feel like I should have just asked them to give me their number and not even bother giving me a proposal. Because for me, if you want it badly enough, then that should really shine in the proposal that you send. And I just thought that the one firm seemed to have a better look. A lot of them were pretty repetitive. They had certain things that they talk about over and over, and you're like, I read this on the last page, but I feel like the things that were repetitive in each one, I thought that the focus, I thought that Axelrod had a better sense of what Penridge is looking for in the things they were repetitive on, when it comes to those kinds of, like, the kind of relationship building and making sure that they're an independent voice and we can contact them anytime, and all of those kinds of things that were their common themes were things that I feel like were a high value to Penridge. So
we had 3 people on mute, so I'm going to say Mr. Kraus, then Mr. Cormack, and then Ms. Cullen. That was the order we unmuted. So Mr. Kraus, you're up.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I read through the proposals also, and there were a couple of things that stood out to me on the Barcane and Thornton proposal. proposal. First, related to the hourly rates of the levels of expertise. I'm not too hung up on that because I look at the bottom line, there's a number that's quoted for each of the 4 years, and that's not going to change regardless of who's doing the work. So that's their number that was quoted. Now, further on in their proposal, when they talk about their firm and their experience, one of the things that stood out to me, and I have to get back to it, I'm scrolling through it as we speak. Okay, so when we talk about the commitment they have and the training, so Barclay has enumerated in this proposal that it's the policy to provide at least 20 credit hours of continuing professional education every 2 years, of which 40 credit hours pertain to areas directly related to government nonprofits. I did not see anything like that in Zelenkowski and Axelrod's proposal. And then a little bit further on page 19, it speaks to their involvement with CPA's Net, which they're a founding member of, a consortium of independent cutting edge firms. So they have a collective, they audit more than 500 government agencies collectively, and have a reach of 100 partners and 300 professional associates. So that network and that information sharing as part of a founding member of this consortium, to me, I did not see that in the other proposal, nor did I see the ongoing staff development and education that they provide or require of their staff to keep them abreast of current trends and thinking in this field. So to me, that kind of sets Barcane apart. I, like some others who have expressed their opinion, I don't like a firm that doesn't give me their best price up front. I've walked away from car deals and other things because I didn't get my best price up front. So I don't like the game, so I don't play it. So that's just me. That's a personal beef. So to me, that did not bode well for them. And I recognize that we're in a different economy now than we were a month or two ago, but there's a few things in the Barcane proposal that stood out to me. So aside from them being the lowest bid, I like some of the things in their proposal about staying abreast of current activities and events and thinking. So that's it for me.
So just
Mr.
to
Clerk?
clarify, I wanted to read the professional development section in the other one because you said that they didn't have
I
that
didn't
same
see it.
requirement. It says, Axelrod provides a minimum of 40 hours of training seminars annually for our professional staff and our clients. In addition, specialized training in the area of governmental auditing and reporting is conducted to satisfy government auditing standards. The professionals assigned to our audits have completed the required specialized training in governmental auditing and reporting for each of the last 3 years. This requirement includes a completion of at least 120 hours of continuing professional education over a 3-year period. And they also went on to talk about how they offer a lot of in-house trainings that that they open up to their clients, which both of them do. They both have those things that they open up to their clients.
All right, so that was, all right, I said that's on page 6 into 7, Megan?
That is on page 8.
8, okay. That's where I'm, all right. Somehow I missed that. I'm scrolling. All right.
Mr. Cormack, you wanted to add something?
No, I'm okay. No, nothing else.
Okay, Ms. Collin?
Okay. I was trying to keep notes. It's been a long time listening to a lot of talking. So I just, regarding the price and not having the, going back to people and asking for a different price, I would argue that everyone was in the same situation a month ago. So the fact that those people did give us the lower price a month ago when we were all in the same situation. So to me, it's kind of immaterial what the situation is right now. As Bill said, if they didn't give you the best price in the beginning, then, you know, why didn't they do that? And as far as the relationship building, on the one hand, I get that. Like, you want to have a good working relationship with people, but, you know, you also, to say that they focus on relationship building so they can be an independent voice, that kind of contradicts each other. Those are contradictory statements in my view. And, you know, I hear you. I know I'm a stickler for, you know, maybe certain quirks and things and elements of people's presentations, but, you know, there have been people that we've hired, honestly, who have also had little errors, if you want to call them that, in their presentations, and, you know, they've turned out to be fabulous. So I wouldn't discount someone for a couple of little technical errors in the midst of a huge presentation. But for me, I was interested in hearing what, you know, I thought Bob's input would be valuable with his experience, but also, you know, we are the school board and we're kind of out here. It's the district administrators that need to actually work with these people, the professionals. I think we always have to be mindful of what our role is exactly. So for Dr. Bolton and Sean, between these two, and given the, you know, the lower price of the B firm, my pictures don't come up. Are you okay with either one more than the other? I mean, what is your opinion? Because you guys are going to be the ones working with these people, and you need to be comfortable with them. And if you know, your opinion of what you think their quality is actually holds more weight, I would think, than even ours. That's just my opinion.
Well, first of all, Ms. Cullen, I apologize for any errors in my resume or presentations during the interview process that apparently I wasn't aware of. I'll go back and try to do that better next time. I'm sorry. As we were going through this process, we obviously had developed the criteria that we were looking for in the RFPs. When we compared that information to what we were looking for, much of that in the summary document that Mr. Daubert put together in working through this and looking at this, it really came down to both Barbara-Cain and Axelrod, which is when Mr. Daubert made the phone calls to districts to kind of say, okay, we're not going to call the districts that you gave us letters on. We're going to call districts that we know, that are either similar in size or people that we know personally, or the ones in Bucks County for the people who are working inside Bucks County. And like I said last week, and I think Mr. Daubert said last week, we received glowing recommendations for both firms. And so we really walked into this thinking that both Barbara-Cain and Axelrod we were comfortable with. And today, I mean, Sean and I even talked this afternoon, and we are still very comfortable with either one of those firms. Obviously, from an auditing standpoint, it's not the expertise of either one of us. And so we did reach out to try to get some opinions in terms of what that would look like in terms of those recommendations. And so I appreciate that Mr. Cormack also did that. I think people in the field, that makes a difference in terms of how they look at firms, as well as Mr. Gerhart in terms of his career and how he looks at that, I think is really important feedback. So I know I'm not tipping the scale one way or another, kind of on purpose, because we really are comfortable with either one of them in terms of that piece. And I just want to clarify that when we reached out to these companies, it really was primarily because we were beyond the 60-day window. And so technically they could have backed off their RFPs even if we picked them, because it was longer than 60 days because of the closure. And so we did reach out to both companies to make sure that they were comfortable with that. Okay. I know we haven't heard from Mr. Rice or Mrs. Walters. I don't know if either one of you want to unmute and speak, but I want to make sure you give you time. Mr. Rice, looks like you did.
All right. So an RFP, I mean, everybody knows an RFP is basically a marketing proposal to sell yourself as a company to do work. That's what an RFP comes down to in real sense. I guess everybody lived through the coronavirus, still living through the coronavirus. I can't even say it now. I apologize. I think everybody's sharpening their pencils. I believe you know, even the $4,000 difference that we're looking at here between Axelrod and Barbicane, Thornton and Company, it's still $4,000 of taxpayer dollars. I look at the breakdown of, you know, partner, manager, supervisor, senior, semi-senior, and staff. The breakdowns, they're irrelevant if the total cost per year over a 4-year period, it's still static. I mean, that's what they're going to be held to. I mean, that's the agreement. So, I mean, it's still a static number. Whoever they have, they got to put them in place. If I'm not correct in that, that's fine. I would look to the people that have, you know, more auditing experience than myself. I'm a numbers person. Other than that, you know, the numbers look good in my sense. I mean, you know, you can throw $30,000 at another one and say that's better. It's sometimes, but you know, it's quality. And if you've reached out to some of their, you know, their customers, I think you have the answers. You already kind of know.
No,
Thank you.
which one, Dave? I'm sorry, I'm not really which one are you leaning towards? If you said they reached out to both and
Correct. I mean, I would say if you're talking $4,500, $4,400 in savings over 4 years, it's still $1,000. If we're going into the next budget year, it's important. How important, you know, Sean and the administration have to work with them. So I'm trying to go back to the documents because I had the documents open and then I went and did some work. So give me 1 minute to go back and get those documents, please. I'll come back on.
Lisa, do you want to weigh in and then we'll switch back to Dave?
Sure. The $4,000 to me over 4 years isn't a huge concern. We were talking $40,000. It'd be a different story. I feel like I understand where we are financially right now with the state of everything. But to me, the biggest thing was the errors in the written proposals. And if you're an auditing firm and your job is to look for things that are not being done accurately, when you're giving an RFP, I feel like you should put out an accurate document. So for this, I'm leaning towards Axelrod and trusting, you know, the recommendation that was brought to the first committee meeting. That's really all I have to add.
Dave, do you want us to come back to you?
I'm still looking for the documents, but I think I have them on my other laptop. So Dr. Bowen, what was the date of the email that you sent? I apologize.
Are you looking for the full proposals or the summary document, or what are you looking for?
I got the summary document open. There was two that I was looking at. That's why I was just going to go back to those two.
Was it the PowerPoint, Mr. Rice, or were you looking for the actual RFP?
No, the documents for each.
They're
Okay.
415 at 10:53.
Thank you.
I would just, you know, to the point about the recommendation, I think the whole reason why we're having this meeting tonight is because that process was not as complete as it should have been. Like, there wasn't as much involvement with the committee that really should have been there. So in my opinion, that process doesn't hold any more weight for me than anything else, because I feel like it wasn't complete. We had these proposals come in on, they were due on February 3rd. We had 2 finance meetings in the interim, you know, when those, well, the March 9th one was scheduled, but we had 2 months where, you know, there wasn't a lot of knowledge about the proposals as far as the committee, the finance committee itself was concerned. So that's, again, the whole purpose of this was to say, wait a minute, let's go back. Let's have everybody involved in the evaluation process, if that's how we're going to go about it. I realize we don't do that with many things, but in this case, when you have a few members of the committee working on it and not others being aware of it, then it's, you have to go one way or the other. And if you're going to have a few, then you need to have all. So that's why we're here tonight, to reevaluate it. And given the input and given the reevaluation, I wrote it down, so I would say Barbacol and not Barbasol, the shaving cream. But so, that's, again, the whole purpose of this was because there wasn't that presentation was most of the time everyone trying to figure out what we were talking about, where this information was coming from, because it was something we talked about in January. And then for 2 months, well, I guess actually 3 months from January, we didn't really hear anything about. The finance committee didn't hear anything about it. It wasn't even mentioned at the finance committee meetings that the proposals were here and they were being evaluated. So to me, this was the do-over to get everybody more informed. So I would go with the lower price, the Barbacol.
So just to clarify on procedure, the last time we put out an RFP for auditors, there was almost no information given to the board. The recommendation was to keep Malley because we've had them for a long time and we like them, and they weren't the cheapest one. And I actually asked for the proposals and was outvoted 8-1 and was told not to micromanage. So when we talk about what the procedure should be, that was what happened last time. And when we put out RFPs for things, the board, on some occasions, there's things that spark an interest with people, and people say, you know what, I want to learn more about this. I really want the proposals, and people ask for them, and then those proposals are sent to board members. And anyone who wants any information at any time can have it. When there was discussion last time that, hey, you know what, we'd really like to take a look at these proposals a little bit further and have further discussion, then certainly we should do that. And if board members want to have those proposals attached for all of the RFPs so that everybody can review them each time, that's a great thing to do as well. The chair of every committee always vets the things that are going on. I think it was appropriate for the administration to ask Ryan's opinion, given that he is an auditor, and that's literally what he does for a living. But I think more input is always better. If additional people would like copies of anything at any time and they ask for it, then those things are sent to them. This was posted on the agenda, which was sent out to board members. If anyone wanted copies of the proposals, anyone could have asked. They would have all been sent to them ahead of the meeting. If anyone had concerns about certain things or recommendations, that could have also been sent to people. And
Okay, can I just
would have been given to people. But again, that's okay that this came up in the last meeting and people shared those concerns. And as a result of people sharing those concerns and wanting more information and more discussion, we're doing that. And that's great that everybody is getting more involved and wants to read all of the proposals and weigh in. I think that's a great thing. But to suggest that somehow this was out of the ordinary, that just isn't the case. I mean, there's been certain RFPs that have spiked in interest in facilities where we're like, you know what, this is something that we want to take a closer look at. Can we get the proposals? And those proposals have been sent.
Megan, I'm sorry, but I mean, you've done a lot of talking this evening, and I think you're misunderstanding the point. The point being, like you just said, the last time that we did auditing, there wasn't a lot of involvement with the board members. And what I said when I made my comments was that it's either going to be the whole committee being involved and informed, or you're going to take a more distant approach to it. And there's a lot of things that we do that are a distant approach. I don't help write curriculum. I don't fill out a rubric for textbook approvals. I look at the rubrics that the teachers, the professional staff have filled out. So that's kind of the point that I'm making, is that most of the time we are out kind of in the outside, and yeah, on the outside, and maybe an opinion will be asked of someone that has particular experience in something, and that's fine, but that's like a, hey, what do you think about this? Kind of, you know, like a one-off, as opposed to being deeply involved in the process this whole way when other board members weren't even aware. So that's where the difference is. The difference lies in there, that if you're going to do it one way, do it one way. But if you're going to involve some people, and in fact, only one person from the finance committee, then you really ought to be informing the others. And to say it's on the agenda, yeah, I mean, we know it's on the agenda, but when I have a textbook that's up for approval, I make sure to send a note to everybody on the committee to make them aware of it. We're all busy people. So, you know, I don't think that there is any harm in doing this. We're still going to be able to vote on it in April. I was simply responding to the point about the recommendation last week being one thing and now people having a different opinion. That's what I was responding to, because the process in this case was not quite maybe what it should have been. That's, you know, I'll just say that. So
Can I?
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say before it escapes my brain. I know a couple people had mentioned some things about the things they like, dislike versus the other, you know, between the two companies, and just to try to get back to the two companies here and this recommendation decision or whatever. For me personally, and I know, and Joan, you mentioned, you know, a couple errors here and there is not going to sway you, and I agree with you. I feel the same exact way. You know, I make mistakes, people make mistakes, but this wasn't just one or two errors. This was like 10 errors throughout the whole entire document. And specifically, one that sticks out to me is, you know, something that Megan brought up earlier. Their proposal said that if they identify something that is a high risk, then there is no further review of that, and they just move on. That's obviously a mistake and an error, but that is a huge error for an auditing company to say, if they identify something as a high risk, they're just going to move on. I could not, my conscience, I could not go with a recommendation for Barbicane because of that. You can't mess that up. If something's a high risk, you have to do your due diligence, you have to review it, and I want a firm that's going to do that. And I would much rather, you know, the price is $4,000 or whatever over the 4 years, and I get that, I hear that, but I would much rather have a firm that I feel comfortable with and confident is going to find issues and actually save us money down the line. You know, if say something happens and, you know, I don't know, just with that mistake, the amount of mistakes in there, saying that they're not going to, you know, if they identify something as a high risk, they're moving on from it. I wouldn't feel confident that they would find issues here that will help us and save the district money, which could end up costing us tens of thousands, $100,000 down the line. I just, there's no way that I could go with Barbicane, and I think I'm perplexed as to how people are just kind of okay with that and can move on from that and accept it and be okay. That's just my, like everybody said, that's just my 2 cents. That's just how I feel. And I don't know, I don't know. I guess that's it. I don't want to go any further. I guess I feel that there was, from what you said, Joan, there was some kind of question as to why I was asked to review this, and I'm
No,
confused by that.
there was no question why you would be asked. It's obvious why you would be asked. The difficulty that I have is that for 2 months, there was no communication with other members of the finance committee. That was what I was pointing out. So the process.
Then why the comment about only the one person was? We all know who that person was. It was me.
Well,
Why the
no,
why the
listen,
comment of the
because
only one person was asked? What?
Ryan, my comment was that there was actually only one person on the finance committee that was privy to any of this information. That was my comment. And that's a true statement. And the statement was to say that
I
there are
apologize.
several members of the finance committee who didn't have any of this information. That was all that I was pointing out. And I think it is.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I'm sorry.
I mean, it's obvious that your experience as an auditor, yes, like I said, just like when someone has a question about a piece of technology, they'll ask Dave or Bill. They would certainly never come to me to ask me about anything about technology, and that's fine. But that's more, like I said, they ask them, hey, what's your opinion of this camera? And I remember that Bill had some knowledge about the cameras that he had shared. So that to me is different from people being intimately involved in a process and providing a lot of, just, I guess, being intimately involved in the process. It's sort of like sitting down and having, certain people interview and not others. For the only point that I was making was that if you're going to involve board members to that level, then it should have been the whole committee being aware, at least, that it was taking place. And they weren't. So that's the only point I was making.
Well, just to be clear, any committees that I've been on that I haven't chaired, I didn't get the material until the agenda went out, including curriculum and including committees when I was the president of the board. I still wasn't getting all of the information. The chair handled that. That's why we have chairs
for curriculum,
putting that on there. But I'm going to switch to Dave. Let's move on from this. Dave, can we swing back to you, because my count right now is that it's 3 and 3. So Dave, why don't you let us know what your opinion is so we can move forward on this?
So it looks to me like there's more. I am unmuted. Yep, I'm unmuted. It looks to me there's more school districts that Barbicane's dealt with in the Bucks County. Am I correct in stating that as I compare notes?
I think so, Dave. I mean, I'd have to count them, but.
So in that reference alone, what would the IU weigh in on that perspective? Since there's familiarity there. I just see further school districts from, I'm just thinking locality. I don't, I see 55 professionals, blah, blah, blah. I see that.
Barbicane does have a footprint in Bucks County where, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Dahlberg, I don't believe Axelrod has any school districts in Bucks County.
That's correct.
But they do municipality work. Is that correct in Bucks County?
Yes.
So I guess my point was I apologize. That was kind of my perspective. As I'm looking through this, I'm like, okay, so an auditor is going to be more familiar with the locality, the district, the area than out of region. In my perspective of what an auditing firm, they're going to be more familiar with the companies, the finances of the institutions, if they're familiar with their community, if you will.
Well, so just to clarify, Axelrod is from Jameson, PA, and the other one is from Wilmington, Delaware.
Not locality where they work, but not their location of their office. The location of the work that they've done. That's what I was referencing.
Is there a particular reason why they don't work in Bucks County if they're from Jameson? I mean,
Mr. Dahlberg, do we know how new their office is in Jamison? Am I correct when I'm saying that this is a footprint that they are expanding in this area through municipal and school district work? Is that accurate?
I don't know how old their office is in Jameson.
Okay.
I think that is pretty accurate, Dr. Bolton, because I think they had they have like a Harrisburg-based.
They definitely have Harrisburg.
Yeah, they have like their main office is in Harrisburg, and some of the support that they said that would be provided to us would come from both offices, both the Harrisburg, but they would be like the support for us would be centralized out of Jameson, but if Jameson couldn't handle it, it'd be backed up by their Harrisburg office. So I do believe that they are trying to expand in the Bucks County or the Bucks-Montco area.
And we did confirm that there are auditors within the Jamison office that have done school district work that was positively received. Right, as is true with Barbicane, but we did make sure that the people in Jamison were also school district auditors, although they are heavy on municipality work at the current time because of their footprint in Bucks County right now is primarily that.
Gotcha.
Ms. Banks-Clemens, is it fair to say that perhaps we've had the conversation in terms of people's clarifying questions? Mr. Dahlberg, is there anything from the recommendation phone calls you had that you think is germane, that is different from what we've talked about the two companies?
No, I don't think so. All the districts that I talked to were positive for both firms, that depending on which firm they worked with, of course. So I was able to speak with Quakertown and Ben Salem here in Bucks County, and also Boyertown School District regarding Barbicane. And for Axelrod, I was able to speak with Lewisburg, York City, Mifflinburg, and Jim Thorpe School District. They do audit the Allentown City School District, but there is a major turnover in their business office right now, and the people that worked with this firm last year to do the audit are no longer there. So just wasn't a viable option for us to talk to someone.
Mr. Dahlberg, just for clarity, that's in the business office of the school district where the turnover is, or the turnover is at the auditing firm?
The school district, the Allentown School District business office turned over.
Okay.
There.
Gotcha.
Just a quick question, Mr. Gerhardt. You raised a good point in regards to that critical and non-critical.
Can't hear you.
So I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I've got to get closer.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it. Has anyone reached out to Barbicane to ask them that question? It seems like we've given Z&A a little bit of a heads up as to saying your numbers aren't correct. Has anyone contacted Barbicane and say, what is this all about? Is this a mistake? Is this really how you look at it?
I mean, I didn't, I haven't, not that I know of anybody's reached out.
I mean, I think it's a good point, and I applaud that you brought it up. But I also do think we need to feather it out to find out, vent it out to find out whether it's a mistake or that's how they do business.
Well,
I would like.
Bob, just to add some clarity, it clearly is a mistake. I don't think that we need to follow up with them because they gave the exact opposite answer on the two different pages. So the one page says they do it the right way and the other page says they do it the wrong way. And since they're contradictory, it's clear that
it's a grammatical error that they made. That's all I wanted to make. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, so there doesn't seem to be there doesn't seem to be a firm that has there doesn't seem to be a majority for either firm at this point. So I don't know if we move forward to the board meeting and then, you know, discuss which firm to propose at that point. I know we're missing 2 board members, and so I'm not sure where they'll fall. And then, you know, Mr. Rice, I think, you know, can get back to us on his thoughts. So is that how you, Dr. Bolton, how do you want to move forward with that?
We currently have it on the agenda without a recommendation. We would like to, for the reasons we talked about last week, move to a vote in April if the board is comfortable holding that vote. The concern would be obviously the securing of a date to do the audit this summer, and to wait to May, even mid-May, the concern is. But we shouldn't vote unless we're ready. But if people feel like they have the information that they need to make the decision, we would prefer if we take it to a vote on Monday night. I believe that Mr. Kraus and you could talk about making sure that Ms. Dolan and Dr. Thompson are up to speed on any questions they might have, since you both listened this evening, and I think could present that view to them so that they walk into Monday night at least having their questions answered. That may also bring to light what the recommendation may be. If we do know in terms of the votes that are there on the board. And if not, I think we have a brief conversation, someone makes a recommendation, and we go to a vote with it.
Okay, sounds good. So the next item on the agenda was supposed to be an update on the JOC budget, but there's some things that are still up in the air. So rather than giving an update tonight, we'll wait and give an update hopefully at the board meeting on Monday. You know, we don't want to be premature. So that's it for the agenda. Did we have any public comment? I don't think we have any public, right? Okay.
No one joined us, no.
All right, the next Finance Committee meeting is scheduled for May 5th, 2020. And I'll move to adjourn the Finance Committee meeting then.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you very much.
Good night.